together. We'd like to welcome all of our elementary and middle school and high school parents. I'd like to just start off with a few logistical things, and then we'll go ahead and get started. First off, if you could please be sure to keep your videos off and your audio muted. That will help to avoid any bandwidth issues as well as any issues with audio feedback. So if you can go ahead and please shut off all of your videos, and please mute your audio. That will be very helpful. Also, I'd like to remind you that the meeting today is being recorded. And then also in the way of logistics, if you have any questions during the town hall, we'll be taking those in the chat room, and you can submit those to the very conveniently titled moderator, Ask a Question. So if you have any questions, please feel free to submit those there in the chat to ask a question. And then at the end of the presentation, then we'll do our Q&A session. So welcome everyone, very excited to have you. Let's please open or join me in opening in a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, we just thank you so much for a beautiful day. Thank you for this amazing group of parents, the ones that are joining us today, as well as all of the amazing ICS community, the ones that are not able to join us today. We thank you for the partnership that they have with us, for the great care that they have for their children, and for the growth both academically and in their character and in their spiritual development here at ICS. We ask that you would just guide this discussion, go before us today. May we glorify and honor you in all that we do, Heavenly Father. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen. All right. Thank you so much again for joining us. I think we have a few more people coming in, so we want to give them a chance to get situated. But I'd like to let you know a little bit about the theme of today's Principal Town Hall, our joint Principal Town Hall. Some of the feedback that we have gotten over the past few months, and even really in the past years, even before Mr. Harding, the middle school, high school principal, and I arrived, is that we're very happy with the school, but sometimes it's very difficult to really understand the pathway. What is the pathway to get from K5? Say my child starts in K5 or in lower elementary. What does that pathway look like to actually get them through middle school to high school, and then beyond that? If they graduate from ICS, then where do they go from there? We've heard ICS is a great school, but it's difficult sometimes to see that pathway, and it was really great feedback. So what we'd like to do today, this is actually a bit of an extension of a talk that I did a few months ago when we had our IB, answering questions about the IB program versus the AP program, where I showed a bit of this presentation. So what I'd like to do, without getting into too much technical detail, is just help you to see a bit of a pathway, how we can get from K5 science, for example, all the way to AP physics. And I want to take you on that journey. And then we'll do the same journey with the area of math, for example, K5 math, all the way up to AP calculus. So what we're going to be doing is taking a certain concept that is taught. Now we could do this with any concept or skill, but I want to move pretty quickly and I don't want to get too technical, but I just want to help give you some kind of a visual and help you to see, what does this pathway look like? So first of all, let's take, for example, K5 science. K5 science, one of the overarching standards that they learn about, the concepts they learn, is forces and interactions. Now I want to take you all the way through to show how this can connect to learning about and applying Newton's second law in AP physics. So in K5, they learn about forces and interactions, and they do an investigation where they go outside and they play kickball. But I want you to really, I've highlighted some of the verbs from the standard. So these are the actual skills that these young students are learning to implement and to apply. Predicting, analyzing, experimenting, and comparing. Because what they're learning to do is, depending on the amount of force with which they kick a ball, they can change the ball's velocity, they can change its acceleration, they can change its direction. They also try with different types of balls so that they can begin to understand how the mass of the ball actually affects its acceleration and its direction depending on the force that acts upon it, which is directly related to what's going to be happening down the road in AP physics. It's kind of cool when you think about it, that these little guys are already developing these concepts. Now let's jump this up to grade 3. In grade 3, one of the overarching concepts that they learn in science is about forces and interactions. And so they have a couple of different experiments and investigations that I want to highlight here. One is a pendulum experiment where they look at a pendulum and they analyze, they predict, they do some graphing, they do some writing, and then they make a claim using supporting evidence. Because with the pendulum, they modify the mass of the pendulum and they modify the force upon it, and then they analyze and predict and graph the direction that and the speed at which the pendulum is going to move. They also do an investigation called the crooked swing investigation, where they're given some popsicle sticks that are built into a crooked swing, and they have to actually analyze and problem solve to create a swing that moves in the proper direction with the right type of force acting upon it. So these investigations also are just building upon what happened in K5 and then moving them toward a deeper understanding of forces and interactions. Now let's jump this up even higher. Let's go to grade 5. Now this investigation that they do in grade 5 about forces and motion has aspects of physics. It actually even has aspects of chemistry as well, because they're using chemical reactions to create chemical cars. But they have to plan and analyze, create a chemical car that's made out of a plastic water bottle, cause a chemical reaction inside the car for the experiment to create a reaction that's strong enough to move their car at a sufficient velocity and in the direction to see whose car can go the furthest. And so they have to be able to problem solve. So they're working with forces in motion as well as chemistry in order to analyze the problem, create these cars, and then experiment to see how they can make their car travel the furthest. So again, it's just building, it's just another building block, moving them even higher in their understanding of forces in motion. Now let's ramp this up to middle school. Let's see what this looks like in middle school. Grade 8, we have a force and a motion engineering internship. And so one of the investigations that happens there in middle school is that they do a ball velocity lab investigation. This is really interesting, I think, because it connects almost directly with what happened, what you saw in K5. Because in K5, they were playing kickball. So they're kind of scaling it down as far as the size of the ball that they're working with, but as far as their understanding and their scientific investigations and the skills that they're using, they're really ramping those up to a grade 8 level. And in this investigation, they're using a small ball, and they're using an apparatus that actually hits the ball, and then they're timing the speed of the ball and the distance that it travels. And they're predicting, they're analyzing, they're making calculations about the speed and the distance and measuring that. And they're also problem solving to see how the force that acts upon the ball then changes and the type of ball that's used then changes the direction and changes the acceleration of the ball. So you can see how these concepts are just building one on top of the other. Now let's take this all the way up to AP Physics and the application of Newton's second law. Now, again, don't want to get too technical, but Newton's second law essentially says that the acceleration of an object is proportional to the force that acts upon it, and inversely proportional to the mass of the object, or force equals mass times acceleration. So in this investigation in AP Physics, the students are doing a cart and a pulley lab investigation, where they have this cart and pulley system, and they're having to make some predictions. They're having to calculate based on the force of the force that acts on the pulley and the cart. And they're actually measuring the velocity of it and analyzing that, and then seeing how that is directly proportional or related to the mass of the cart and the acceleration of it. So you can see the formula here that they're working with. So they're taking all of these concepts that they have learned from K5, building one on top of the other, and that leads all the way to AP Physics. So that's sort of a science example, and I know we went kind of quickly there, but I think it's really interesting to look at how our little guys, our youngest learners in K5, can begin to learn and develop concepts, and then what does that look like as we unpack it, we build it, we grow, and help these students increase their learning and their understanding and deepen their knowledge so that they can get to AP Physics and do activities and investigations like this. Now let's take this and apply it to a math example. And we're going to actually go through several grades. So I'm going to go quickly on this. I want to just take the overarching concept of geometry, so you can see what this looks like at a K-5 level, and let's just move this all the way up to what this would look like in AP Calculus. So in K-5, our students begin by just identifying and describing shapes. They're just exploring. They're analyzing, comparing, they're creating, they're composing shapes. So you can see some K-5 students here in the picture, just exploring with shapes, learning the names of them, the attributes of them, comparing different shapes with others, and then putting shapes together to make creations and composing different things. Now, what does that look like when we move this up to grade 1? Now they begin to reason with the shapes and their attributes. The picture is a little bit hard to see, but the students are actually making rectangles out of smaller squares or cubes. And so they're making different arrays of rectangles. So some rectangles might be 4 small squares by 3 small squares. And then they're learning to see how that relates to how many squares are all together, which is actually kind of building toward the concept of understanding area as well as multiplication in a very visual way. Now, what does that look like in grade 2? In grade 2, there is an investigation where they are looking at how many squares, how many equally sized squares it takes to fill in different size rectangles. And so you can see them having this hands-on experience here, using these smaller squares to fill in the rectangle, counting how many squares it takes, which again is building their understanding of this concept of measuring area. Now in grade 3, let's see what that looks like. Here's an investigation the students did recently, again, dealing with geometry, measurement, and area, where the students are making hopscotch grids. And what they did was went out to the courts and they measured out different size squares, same size squares, and then they measured to find out what the total area was as they were playing hopscotch. So it becomes a very fun and interactive and engaging way to explore the concept of area and build on what they've learned previously in other grades. Now let's take this up to grade 4. In grade 4, they do step away from the concept of area, but they still are learning deeply about geometry as they are exposed to lines, angles, and how those go together to make shapes. So here you can see a hands-on investigation that's happening that they did recently, where they're actually constructing line segments and angles of different sizes in a hands-on way and exploring that concept, because that's going to then build into what happens in higher grades. So now let's take this up to grade 5. Now in grade 5, we actually have a video. It's a short little video of actually building a city. So in grade 5, the overarching concept or standard is to be able to graph points on a coordinate plane to solve real world and mathematical problems. So what they've actually done is actually taken this a step higher in grade 5 and constructed a 2D and a 3D city. And you can see through the pictures that they're exploring the concept of surface area, both in the 2D plane as well as in the 3D plane. So we can watch the video, please. All right, thank you. Very cool. I love watching that video and just seeing how all of the, starting from K5, just exploring shapes and what they are and how many sides and how many vertices that they have. And then just building and that concept up through the grade levels, how that can turn into a project like this, where they're actually constructing a 3D city and looking at different shapes surface area. Now let's take this same concept and let's ramp it up to the middle school level. What does that look like in pre-algebra? So in pre-algebra, the overarching strand here is solving real world and mathematical problems using or involving area, surface area, and volume. And in this investigation in middle school pre-algebra, the students are actually exploring the concept of how the surface area and the volume actually work in conjunction to be able to construct a box that has the right surface area and the right volume to be able to hold the most water. And so what they're discovering is that just because the overall surface area might be bigger, that the box might not hold as much water. So they have to be able to explore both the volume and the surface area together and see how those concepts intertwine in order to construct a box that will hold the most water. As you can see, it's a very engaging activity, very hands-on, real-world application to this important mathematical concept. Now, if we take this concept and then we just continue to build on it, that takes us to high school, Algebra 2. So you can see a problem on the board that the Algebra 2 teacher has posed to the students and how they're beginning to solve this problem. And so in Algebra 2, they take this idea all the way from K5, just exploring shapes. Now we're ramping it up to high school Algebra 2, where they're actually using algebraic equations to be able to solve problems related to area. And then let's go ahead, as promised, we'll take it all the way to AP Calculus. So in AP Calculus, they're still taking this concept of area, but they're actually now being able to use functions and integrals to be able to solve for area under the curve. And you can see the functions and integrals that they're using here in this particular problem to solve for the area under the curve. Now, what is the what is the point of all of this talk? The point is, of course, to see the pathway. If my child starts in K5 and moves all the way up to through middle school and high school, you can now see the pathway, how we've kind of unpacked some of those concepts and skills that they learn and show how they build on one another moving up through the grades. But this is what it leads to. So I want to go ahead and now turn it over to our middle school and high school principal, Mr. Darryl Harding, as he talks about how all of this now leads to results.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kershner. That was a wonderfully informative presentation. It's amazing to see how it all just connects together. And yes, you're absolutely right. It does lead to results. And we've been seeing some excellent results here at ICS over the past few years. And I do want to highlight to you the results that we've had. In terms of the AP, Mr. Kershner highlighted a couple of AP classes. The AP is scored at a maximum of 5, and 91% of our students achieve a 3 or better, with 70% achieving a 4 or better and 34 achieving a 5. And there are quite a few colleges and universities, if you score a 4 or above, will give you college credit, which means savings for you when it comes time for you to send your children off to universities and colleges. Going back a little bit into the earlier grades, PSAT, we just finished that up in October and November, and we got our results. And I shared this a little bit at my principal's coffee back earlier in this semester. But I think the results speak for themselves. If we compare our ICS students in grade 9, 10, and 11, our students are well above the global average in the PSAT. And this is all schools around the world that are participating in the PSAT, thousands of schools. Our grade 9s are 105 points above. This is on a 1,600 point scale, 1,600 point scale. Our grade 10s are 175 points above the global average. And our grade 11 students are 123 points above. Miraculously, the class of 2022, the group that are going to graduate next year, had an increase from one year to the next of 77 points. And the class of 2023, they saw an increase from one year to the next of 111 points. I mean, those are astounding numbers to see these from our school and our students. And it all connects back to just the way the learning is articulated vertically here at ICS, the way K5 leads into elementary, which leads into our middle school, which leads into our high school. It's not a mistake, it's by design, but sometimes we don't see it. Sometimes we're just so captivated by our own divisions and where our children are that we don't quite know. And so I'm very pleased with Mr. Kershner's presentation and to be able to share with you the wonderful results of our students in the upper years. But of course, one of the concerns is always, where can my child go from here? Is ICS as an American curriculum school only preparing my child for an American university or a North American university? Are we limiting where we can go by choosing to remain at ICS? And that's simply not true. Over the course of the last 5 or 6 years, if you would have learned from Mr. Lau in our AP versus IB presentation last semester, we've sent students to Australia, to Canada, to Hong Kong, to Singapore, and to the United Kingdom. And there are pathways for you to get into places like Australia. You can get into top Australian universities, Australian National University, University of Sydney, the University of Melbourne. The difference is you must apply for a course of study. The SAT and the SAT or the ACT is important for you. They do it a little bit differently than what you see in other places, where there's not a numerical cutoff that's rigid. It changes from year to year based on the cohort that's applying that year. In Canada, we've sent students to the University of Toronto, the University of British Columbia, and McGill University. University of Toronto and the University of British Columbia are in the top 25 universities in the world rankings year after year. For these schools, the most important factor for you to consider is your junior and senior year. They're really looking at how well you've done in grade 11 and 12. There's only a few essays. There are SATs or ACTs that you should take. That's based on being an international student or a student from the United States. And you have to have an idea of the general place you want to study, but nothing limiting Australia, Canada from being a place that you can go if you graduate from ICS. Hong Kong, we've had some success recently in Hong Kong with the University of Hong Kong, the Chinese University of Hong Kong, and the University of Science and Technology. The most important factor here is the standardized test scores. Our PSAT scores and our AAP scores indicate that we are more than preparing our students to enter into these universities. Hong Kong is looking for a holistic student. Are they someone who has carried out service learning that is not just one-off little bits here and there, but that has been sustained over a long period of time? Are they involved in sports? Are they involved in music, drama? Do they go out into the community and pour into those who need? You may need a second language to enter into Hong Kong, which highlights one of the curricular requirements here at ICS, where we do require students to take either Mandarin or Spanish for at least 2 years while in high school. And many of our students take a foreign language all along the way. Singapore is becoming a further and more frequent place where our students are trying to enter. And a lot of students internationally are starting to look to Singapore and its top universities, NUS, Nanyang, and the Singapore Management University. Standardized tests are important here, your SAT, ACT, AP, and any subject tests that you may have taken before their cancellation. There are minimum grade requirements for schools, and you should have a general idea for what you study. But whether you're an AP student, an IB student, or an A-level student, you can get into these schools, and we've sent students to these schools. And finally, and probably the most frequent question we get asked is about the United Kingdom. Now, these universities listed here are some of the top universities in the world, and it does take special students to get into here. It takes a holistic student who's done so much more than just get good AP scores and just get good grades in their classes at school. I would encourage you to speak to Mr. Lau if you're looking at top universities to find out what else these schools are looking for. But being at an AP certainly does not limit you in getting into these schools. They're usually looking for good AP scores, but 3s or above. 3 is certainly attainable for our students at this school. You saw that 91% of our students got a 3. Letters of recommendation and personal statements are probably one of the most important pieces to get into schools in the United Kingdom. Again, that has nothing to do with whether it's IB, A-level, or AP. Extracurricular, volunteer, and internships in a related course of study become an important piece as well. The grades at these schools are usually just minimum cutoffs, and everything else becomes a far more important piece. I would encourage you to reach out and look at some of our social media posts, especially for Carissa, who's of the class of 2019, as she shares her learning experience here at ICS and how that's led to her being fully prepared to be a successful student at King's College in London. I'm learning that she was also accepted into the University College London, but chose King's College London because it was a place where she felt that it served her best. She shares how wonderfully her teachers not only nurtured her, but challenged her to take a course of study that was right where she needed to be, but perhaps a little bit more than she would have done on her own. She speaks fondly about how the teachers gave her the skills that are necessary to be successful as an independent university student. I wanted to highlight for all of you because sometimes it's not really well known where we send our students, especially with our younger years parents who are joining us today. But we do send our kids to good schools all over the world. We do get excellent results from our students on our standardized testing. Thank you very much for listening to this portion of the presentation. I am now going to turn over to Ms. Sarah Go, who will moderate a portion of questions and answers involving Mr. Kershner and I.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for coming. And thank you for the presentations, Mr. K and Mr. Harding. As mentioned, my name is Sarah Go, and I am the Advancement Director here at ICS. So today I will be moderating the live Q&A session. Please continue to send your messages through the chat box below, and let's begin. So the first question goes to, are you ready, Mr. K? In elementary school, what field trips will the students be going to in 2021-22?
Yeah, that's a great question. We are very thankful, actually, even this year, that we are now able to start back up with field trips. We've already had one group go. We've got another group going tomorrow, and some more happening throughout the rest of the semester. For next year, we actually, that is up to the teachers. We let the teachers collaborate on that and look at what their curriculum is and really align where the field trip location is and the activities that are happening there, align that to what the concepts and skills and standards are that they're learning. As an example, in grade 5, this year, the students recently went on a field trip to Sungei Buloh Wetland Reserve, because in grade 5 in science, the students are learning about food chains and how different aspects of the food chain have an impact on other links of the food chain. And so they were able to actually go to the wetland reserve, do a number of fun and engaging activities there as they explored in order to really bring that concept to life for them. So we're really leaving that open to the teachers as far as what types of areas in Singapore, what types of activities are available for school groups that tie into our curriculum and the skills and concepts that they're learning. But of course, we always make sure that we take into consideration safety of our students. So we always evaluate that aspect, of course, first and foremost, to make sure that anywhere that they go, that there are measures in place to keep our students safe, to make sure that they stay engaged and to make sure that they're learning.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Another elementary questions, and this is regarding uniforms.
Okay.
Can elementary students wear PE shorts like middle school and high school students? As of now, they are not available at the uniform store in smaller sizes.
Yeah, so I'm assuming that that this question that the parent posed is asking, with the rest of the PE uniform, with the PE shirt, can they also wear the PE shorts on PE days? That is definitely something that we can look at for next year and see if that is possible to maybe get some of those smaller sizes in the PE shorts. We actually have made some changes that Mr. Harding might allude to in some of his questions that come up, actually with the shorts for the females and for our young ladies and middle school and high school, which that will take place next year. And that will actually have a trickle down effect in elementary school, because as you know, in elementary school, our girls are only allowed to wear the skirt up to grade 4, and then after that, then the skirt is not an option once once our young ladies start to grow a bit more in grade 5. So we are making some changes for the shorts for the older young ladies, and so that the idea of PE shorts for all of the students, even the little guys, for PE days is something that we can also take a look at for sure.
And will the school consider to extend sports ECA for kindergarten kids? For example, excuse me, for example, soccer and gymnastics.
Yes, we are very hopeful that next year we will not be under such tight restrictions within our school setting. Right now, even though in phase 3, a number of restrictions have lifted or at least been relaxed to some extent, and that has granted us much more freedom and flexibility with how we can do things here at school. Things are still pretty tight for anything that falls under the umbrella of preschools, and our K4s and K5s do fall under that umbrella with the Ministry of Education. So for now, this year at least, we are a bit limited on what we are able to offer for them. However, in the upcoming year, we do want to be able to expand things even more as restrictions are hopefully lifted with those little guys.
Here's a question regarding transition. I'm not sure who wants to take this one. Maybe you both could. What is the difference between the school life in primary and middle school? And how can we parents help them prepare for middle school?
I think I can.
Yeah, Mr. Harding, you want to take that one?
I can start it off. I think that probably the biggest, I have a 6th grader who just came in to the middle school. So from a parent perspective, and having been in the middle and high school as a teacher and administrator for a while now, the biggest difference is their time management and self-management. That's probably the #1 skill that if every 6th grader came in good at that, the transition would be so much more smoother, because they go from being pretty much locked into a single space for most of the day in the elementary and having 1, maybe 2 teachers in the run of a day, to now having to move around from class to class, perhaps 4 different locations, having to do that, get their books out of their locker, remember their locker combination, go through their class, get their homework written down or into their Google Calendar, go to their next class, remember their lunch, remember their mask, remember to refill their water bottle, which clothes do I wear, do I have PE, don't I have PE? So being able to just manage the chaos, as I call it, of the first couple of weeks. We do plan to bring our students, our 5th grade students, for an opportunity to experience a couple of days of that. We're going to have to do it a little differently this year. Just because of COVID restrictions and just the capacity limits that we have on our classes. But they will have an opportunity to experience a day in the life of a middle schooler, just to get an idea of how fast paced and how different it actually truly is. Mr. Kershner, I'm not sure if you have anything to add.
Sure. Just want to add to that we have already begun discussions about these transition procedures and steps to help support our grade 5s moving into grade 6, looking at what's been done previously here at ICS to support that, the great things that have already been done, as well as planning on some other things that we can do to just continue to enhance that process for them and to support them in their learning. And I know our grade 5 teachers are already starting to begin that conversation. What is middle school going to be looking like for you guys, just to get them prepared for that. But that's that day in the life of a 6th grader transition piece that Mr. Harding mentioned is a great thing that we're able to do to help them really get an idea before the day of their first day of 6th grade, to really see what it's going to be like making all of those transitions from one class to another, and being able to prepare them for that.
Talking about transitions, we're going to transition most of the question now to Mr. Harding. It's an avalanche of questions for you, so get ready.
Wonderful.
Grade 9 and grade 10 are in the same classes like modern history and robotics. Can you help me understand how different grades can be in the same class. Do they get different assignments based on their grade level?
Yes, probably one of the best ways to try and differentiate that is to think less about the grade level and more about the subject. Because modern world history has a set of standards and they're not tied to a grade, they're tied to the subject. So long as a student comes out of sixth, seventh, and eighth fully prepared with the skills to be successful in either modern world history or human geography or economics, then whether they're in grade 9, 10, or 11 is not so relevant for classes like robotics, like history, and so on and so forth. Classes that are honors, yeah, you would want to be able to have done some high school before you go into honors classes, but it's really tied to the standard and not to grade. And some students, because we only ask for 3 credits of social studies, some students choose not to take a social studies in grade 9, but to pick it up in grade 10 and then do 11 and 12 to meet their 3 credits. While some others might choose grade 9 to do their modern world history class. And that's perfectly fine as well, because they're all just going towards the same standard, which is developmentally based on the subject and the skills of the subject and not on the years in terms of how old they are or what grade they're in. Robotics is an elective, and so there's really no prerequisites for a lot of our electives. So you could have kids from all over the grades in our elective classes.
And what's the difference between a PSAT and an SA2 score?
Yeah, so the PSAT is a preparatory SAT, so it's a pre-standardized academic test. And the SAT is the one that the colleges and universities look at. And that's the one that I highlighted, the SAT, that the universities and colleges want to see. The PSAT is aligned in its format and its questioning to an appropriate level for the grade 11, up to grade 11. But what it does is on College Board, we can actually go in and get feedback specific to every single student that took the PSAT at our school. And it will tell us the areas in which the student needs to improve. So for example, if a student's geometry skills were perhaps not where they need it to be in order to get to the higher level of the PSAT scores, let's say 1,500 points, we can go into our own administrator's account on College Board, look at that, sit with the student and work out a plan, a study plan for the student so that when they take the SAT in their grade 11 or between grade 11 and 12 years, they've had a focused study on what they need to do to improve and to get the best SAT score possible. I know Mr. Lau is working on that. That's something we both discovered this year when we first pushed the PSAT out back in October. And we were just stunned by the amount of data that's in there. And I don't know, I know other schools I've been at have not used it, but our intention is to really use that. I know he's met with some students already to just give them sort of a study plan on how they can get, even in English, like if grammatical structures is a specific area where the student will need to work. If they got quite a few of those questions incorrect on the PSAT, that'll show up as being an indicator of weakness for the student. And it allows us to then be very specific about student study plan going forward for the SAT. So they're really well connected. Although a lot of schools don't connect them that well, our intention is to connect them. Otherwise, it's a waste of time, to be honest.
And this is a connected question. When will high school students be introduced to University Pathway Talk and get them to start thinking about their future studies?
Yeah, so as soon as Mr. Lau's back from Korea, he is going to be sitting down with our grade 8s and our grade 9s and actually working on, well, continuing to work on the grade 9s 4-year plan. So one of the first things he does when he met with his grade 9s at the beginning of this year was, where do you want to go to school? What do you want to study? And you know, the old question of what do you want to be when you grow up? And then doing some research as to what colleges and universities make the most sense and what pathway of courses will get you into that college, or will give you the opportunity to get into that college. So for our grade 9s, 10s, and 11s, it has started. Our grade 9s and 10s will have a refresher in the coming months, and our grade 8s will get their first conversation before we break for summer.
There's a great suggestion from a parent here. For grade 11 and 12, it would be awesome if they could meet the alumni and learn about university life and the application process. As many of them are away, can ICS utilize the summer or winter vacation period to connect our grades 11 and 12 with the alumni? Great
I
suggestion.
think that's an amazing suggestion. Um, yeah, I think that's a wonderful suggestion. We're actually having a conversation soon about increasing our alumni relations and connections at ICS. It's a bit challenging. We're trying to get a couple students on campus, but in order for us to bring students on campus under COVID restrictions, there needs to be a specific purpose. And we're not getting much clarity as to whether that is a good purpose or we could do it through Zoom. But it's a great suggestion. And the idea of summer and winter vacation, I think, is one that we could get them on campus without having the rest of the students on campus. So yeah, we'll certainly jot that one down. Thank you.
And this is a segue about COVID and academic results. Based on the academic results, have you seen a change due to COVID, or have our children continued to improve?
Well, I got to admit, I mean, the perseverance and the grit that our students have shown through all of this, their willingness to have to make a turn on a dime to make things happen has been, I mean, just stunning to me. It's been inspiring to me to see that. We haven't seen a drop in grades. We truly and honestly haven't. In fact, this year's PSAT scores, everybody increased beyond what the normal increase is from year to year. Our MAP test, the same thing. Everybody increased beyond what was expected. And what's really interesting is you got to remember that we had 3-4 months of online learning last year that really should have or could have had an adverse effect on our students, but we're still seeing growth. We're still seeing students edging up towards where they're capable of being. I think the biggest thing I've seen is perhaps a bit more social and emotional things popping up. And that's something where, I think the dynamics are changing for me as a leader, where I'm having to work with a lot more students just on helping them emotionally navigate these times rather than academically navigating these times. But it's a pleasure to work with them on that.
Mr. Kershner, do you have anything to add about that for elementary?
I just have to echo what Mr. Harding said with our recent MAP scores, which I highlighted in our elementary school town hall. From an academic standpoint, our students are doing extremely well, very much above what the world average would be. But again, just to echo him, we have seen how the COVID situation has taken somewhat of a toll on the social and emotional aspect of the students. But this really is I'll take the principal hat off and put the parent hat on. As a father of 2 kids here at ICS, I feel like this community has just been extremely supportive in a challenging time. When so many people are struggling, maybe they know people who are affected by COVID directly, becoming ill or severely ill. It's affected everyone with the ability to not be able to travel and see family in other countries. It's made many of our kids feel disconnected from things and from people in many ways. But just as a parent, I have felt that my kids have been very well supported, both in the high school and in the elementary school, by the teachers, by the counselors, and just by the entire ICS family. So I think this is a very safe space for kids to be able to have these challenges and to have the support to get through them.
Great answer. Let's put the spotlight on teachers for a moment. And this is for middle school and high school. What do you do to maintain the level and quality of middle school and high school teaching staff so that they can help students excel?
Yeah. So one of the things that I implemented as soon as I came in was more frequent observations. I am in the classroom. I think last year I got into every teacher's classroom at least 3 times. And based on that observation, I had a form rubric of best practice teaching and learning strategies, and the teacher got feedback. And then we sat down as a partnership and worked through the feedback that was given and how we can do things better. And then there was a follow-up. So I went with them a second time and a third time. And all the while looking for improvements in the things we talked about, but then also perhaps making more suggestions on how we can improve and be better. Another way was we asked all our students at the end of every semester to fill out a course evaluation form. Looking at the feedback on those course evaluation forms, I met with, it was shared with all of our teachers. And then areas where there was a great concern to me, I met with each and every one of those teachers, and we talked about those concerns and how we can do better as a school to overcome those concerns. Because at the end of the day, the students, that's why we're here. And if our students are feeling as if they are not supported academically, socially, emotionally, then we've got to do something to fix it. And those are tough conversations. They're difficult conversations, but they're conversations that are necessary. And sometimes lead to decisions where, you know, the ICS boat is heading in this direction. And if somebody doesn't want to go there with us, we thank them for their service and we say, okay, well, we're heading in this direction. Thank you very much, but this is where we need to go. This is where we believe as a school, our students are best serviced, and that's where we're going to head. Haven't really reached that stage yet, but there's still a few months left. But most teachers have been very open to and receptive to the feedback that students and I have given to them.
Thank you for that. So now we're going to go into a little bit of technical Schoology, PowerSchool kind of things. How can a parent track missing assignments consistently? Sometimes there are notifications in Schoology and sometimes there are not. Drilling down into PowerSchool is quite cumbersome.
Yeah, I don't, PowerSchool is where the end grade goes. So I would just worry about PowerSchool. I check PowerSchool as a parent every now and then, but Schoology is my go-to. I've set up in my own personal settings where I get an email when something is overdue for my son. It's not default anymore. It used to be, but now the default is that I don't get the email. So I actually had to physically go in and turn on notifications. So if you do that, I think you'll find you'll get, well, hopefully not too many more emails because your children are handing in things on time. But I do get an email the morning of something was due. So if something was due yesterday at midnight, I would wake up this morning to an email saying that an assignment is past due. One of the things that Ms. Stuckey and I have been looking into with Schoology, is a greater systematic way that's consistent across teachers. So essentially saying at the beginning of next year, this is how you will put in assignments, and everybody will do it the same way, so that for you as parents, you're able to go to one place for all of your students' classes and see exactly what it is due and when it is due. There hasn't been any precedent set where I'm telling all teachers, or the principal, have told teachers where you need to put it all into the calendar or you put it all into assignments. It's just I'll put it onto Schoology and let the parents figure it out. That's going to change for next year. It's going to be more systematic and consistent.
My son is in the ECA math competition. I would like to know if this prepares students for the American Math Competition, AMC, for grades 10 and 12, and if the school will apply on behalf of the students.
Okay, so for those of you who don't know, the AMC is the American Math Competition that is offered in grade 8. There's an AMC 8, there's an AMC 10, and there's an AMC 12. Some other tests that are done typically in international schools is the Waterloo Assessment, which is out of the University of Waterloo in Canada. And a lot of schools in Asia have started to trend towards SASMOS, which I believe is one that's put out on the island here in Singapore. We do intend next year to register students for AMC 8, 10, and 12 based on their desire to do the assessment. And yes, this math competitions ECA has been developed with those assessments in mind. Since we only started the ECAs this year in the fall, in the spring, in January, we've missed the deadline for this year's assessments. But we will be starting ECAs, God willing, as soon as we get back for the next school year. with the goal of having our students, by their own choice, take the AMC 8, 10, and 12, maybe the Waterloo and SASMOS, just depending on the cost that you're going to have to incur on some of those assessments.
And were the senior thesis presentations recorded this year?
No, unfortunately, they were not. No, we did not record the senior thesis. It was one of those, we found out phase 3 was coming and we are going to be able to do it live. And it was, let's get it. Okay, we need to get it done. Fast paced, lots of changes. And we didn't actually have time to plan for any sort of recording of the senior thesis. So unfortunately, not this year.
Okay, and I think we have one more time for one more question, and this is involving buses. Can we have bus provision for days with ECAs? Anybody? Anybody want to take it?
I defer to Mr. Kershner.
Can you, I'm not sure bus provision, what?
So this parent is saying that they already pay for bus, and it's such a waste for those 6 times that we have ECA, 6 or 8 times that when we have ECA, they have to book a Grab or a cab and bus. So can we have a bus provision for the days that our kids have ECAs?
Oh. Okay, yes, thank you for clarifying. Yes, I understand where you're coming from with that. Obviously, you don't want to be paying for a service that you might not be using on some days. As you know, however, our bus company that we use is considered an outside vendor. And so any arrangements with the bus company for payments or anything of that nature must be made directly with the bus company. So that would really be an inquiry that you would need to make directly to the bus company.
Thank you so much, principals, for your answers to these questions. We do have more questions that are coming in, but we will reach out to those parents to answer those questions for you, because some of those questions are really specific. So I'll hand this over to you, Mr. Harding, to close off.
Thank you very much, Ms. Go. Thank you very much, Mr. Kershner, and to parents. I think this is the longest we've had to go with Q&A in any of the principals' coffees. So wonderful questions, excellent questions. So happy to have you all engaged in this journey that we're on together to educate your children and to get them ready for life after ICS. Thank you for coming in. This is one of the highest attended ones as well, I believe. So we're just so thankful. I can't express enough how thankful we are for your partnership and your trust in us as a school to care and nurture your children. It's an honor, it's a privilege. We don't take it lightly. And thank you again for your time and all of your cooperation throughout this year as we navigated all the changes and COVID restrictions and non-restrictions. Look for any of you who are keen, look for the middle school, high school principals coffee that is coming up on April 8th. The highlights will be looking at the Week Without Walls. We'll also highlight our drama production, and we will hear from Ms. Stuckey on our middle school science program, and to be able to give you some insights into Amplify, a big change that we've made with our science curriculum in the middle school this year, as well as some changes coming in the Bible curriculum. So please be on the lookout for that. Even if you're not a middle school, high school parent, you are more than, even if you're not an elementary, or if you are an elementary parent, you are more than welcome to attend. If you have not done so already, please check your email for your re-enrollment contracts. We are in the middle of the re-enrollment process here. And if you to do that a little bit early helps our wonderful admissions team process things and helps us process what we can do next year for your children. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day. We look forward to seeing you soon. Bye-bye.